there is, because it strikes directly at the character of God. And once you have adulterated the character of God, you have lost the guidelines for any other moral judgment. And so Pandora's box is open and everything is going to be chaos, unless there is the right perspective of God. If you don't have the true perspective on God, then everything is lost. First of all, idolatry is libel on the character of God. L-I-B-E-L. It is libel, it is slander on the character of God. The idolatrous heart, and here's the point, assumes that God is other than He is, and that is a terrible sin. Tozer says, and well says, a God begotten in the shadows of a fallen heart will quite naturally be no true likeness of the true God. End quote. You see, idolatry is not just wearing a loincloth and bowing down to a rock. Idolatry is not just kneeling before an image. In Romans chapter 1, we have basically the pattern of this. When they knew God, Romans 1:21 says, they glorified Him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain or proud in their imagination, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man. Man has always wanted to make God in his own image. Man always wants to drag God down. All right, a second thought. Idolatry is also worshiping the true God in the wrong way. When we were earlier in the 10th chapter of 1 Corinthians and discussed Israel, we discussed the fact of making the golden calf, remember? In Exodus 32. And we said that in the first 6 verses of Exodus 32, when they made the golden calf, it was a calf that was made, believe it or not, to be a representation of the true God. They were representing the God who brought them out of Egypt. They were worshiping the right God, but in the wrong way, you see? It says, Aaron said to them, now that the thing is made, let us declare a feast unto Jehovah, he says. In Psalm 106:19, they made a calf in Horeb and worshiped the melted image. Now listen to this verse. Thus they changed their glory into the similitude of an ox that eats grass. Now who is the glory of Israel? Who is it? Who is their glory? Well, it's God. Jehovah God. They changed God into an ox. And I see it so much today in the kind of worship of God that is mindless, that has no truth to it, where they're just supposedly worshiping God with sensual desire. When you do not worship God out of truth because you have no truth, then you tend only to worship God out of your senses, and you have a sensual worship, and that translates easily into the kind of pagan worship we know in the history of the world, right? Thirdly, now I'll give you some specifics on idolatry to help you to define it. Idolatry is worshiping any image. It is worship of any image. And there are so many scriptures that we wouldn't even attempt to cover them all to define this, but I'll give you one, Isaiah 44:17. And the residue of it, he makes a god, even his carved image. He falls down unto it and worships it and prays to it and says, deliver me, for you are my God. Now there's a perfect definition of an idol. The guy makes it in a fire, he sticks it on the ground, he bows down, he worships, he makes sacrifices, he says, you are my God, do this, do this. That's idolatry, to worship any kind of image. Now, let me give you another idea. Number 4, I'm just listing these thoughts. Idolatry is worshiping angels. Don't ever worship angels. And we have a good illustration in the book of Revelation where John tried to worship an angel, and what did the angel tell him to do? He told him to get up and cut it out. He says, I'm only a creature like you. What are you doing down there, John? Worship God. So you have Revelation clear on that. And also in Colossians 2:18, it says, watch out for this false doctrine about worshiping angels. Colossians 2:18. There's no place for the veneration and the worship of angels. That's idolatry. Fifthly, idolatry is worshiping devils. In Revelation 9:20, it says that they were, in the picture of the tribulation, worshiping demons. And that goes on today, doesn't it? People who believe in the Satan church and bow down to demons and bow down to false deities and spirit beings, mediums, and all that we have, the trappings that go with it. A sixth thought in defining idolatry, and I don't know if you ever thought about this, but idolatry is worshiping dead men. Dead men. Any dead men. I'll never forget when I have been at St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. They have that statue called the Black Peter. People go by and they kiss him on the toe, and they've kissed away his toe. Now let me get it much more down to our society and to what we think in terms of our own attitudes. Idolatry is any idol in your heart. Idolatry is any idol in your heart. It could be a lot of things. Education. There's some people who bow down to education. All they want are degrees. They don't want just a name. They want a name with a whole bunch of extraneous letters strung on the end of it. Some people bow down to science. Chad Walsh has written a book called Campus Gods on Trial, and he talks about the fact that on the campuses of America, the students have gods. And summing it all up, basically the gods of modern man are humanism, materialism, and sex. Son of man, Ezekiel 14:3, these men, and he's talking here about the elders of Israel in verse 1. The elders of Israel have set up their idols in their heart. They haven't made any stone images, and they haven't made any gold and silver gods, but they have idols in their heart. And they put the stumbling block of their iniquity before their face. I mean, they've got this thing between me and them. All they can see is this idol. This is what they're bowing down to. They can't give me priority. They're too busy getting an education in our day. They're too busy making money. They're too busy being somebody. They're too busy with their activities. They're too busy worshiping the god of recreation or sport or whatever it is, and they got that between them and me. Now here's another thing that is idolatry. This is the 8th in the list. Idolatry is covetousness. Or covetousness is idolatry. Somebody who covets really is worshiping in the materialism end, isn't it? This is money, things, possessions. It could be a house, a car, clothes, more money, more bonds, more stocks, bigger business, more products, more inventory, more whatever. You cannot worship God, the true God, in the true way, Jesus said, and also worship money, God and mammon. There's another thing, and I don't want to spend too much time because the Holy Spirit's going to deal with you on this as he was with me. But number 9, and just giving you a long list of the things to define idolatry is also lust. Idolatry is lust. I think this is a very helpful verse. Philippians 3:19. Whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly. There are people who live for the one thing that they have in mind centrally, and that's to eat. You know, there are people who haven't finished the meal they're eating until they're already thinking about where they're going to get the next one and what it's going to be. You know any of those people? It's true. People can live to eat, but that isn't all that he has in mind here. It can be a lust for anything. Some people just run around to pander sex. Oh, they just go from one sex object to the next, you know. It's a magazine, and when the magazine's done, it's a television program. When the television program's done, it's whatever, and that's in their mind all the time. It can be lust for any direction, toward any object. Strong desire sets up gods. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life. And what does the Bible say that we're to do about idolatry? What does it say in 1 Corinthians 10:14? Do what? Flee. Now I want to help you a little bit further to know why you ought to run by telling you what effect idolatry has on you and on me. How does idolatry affect us? Number 1, it defiles us. In Ezekiel 20 verse 7, it says, defile not yourselves with idols. Secondly, idolatry has not only a defiling effect on the person who's involved, but it has a polluting effect on everybody around him. A person who worships an idol tends to tear down everybody around him. You see this in Israel. A little group of people began worshiping Baal, and pretty soon it had national consequences. And Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 18 helps us to see that in these terms. It says, wherefore I poured my fury on them, for the blood that they had shed on the land, and for their idols by which they had polluted it. Another thing about idols, they can't help you anyway. You don't have one idol in your life that's going to be any use to you. You certainly can't turn to your money when you get into real problems. You can't turn to your education. You can't turn to whatever particular point of fame you might have. In Isaiah, I think it's 46:7, you have that indicated. It says, it discusses idolatry. It's really funny to see the way he discusses it here. He says these guys are making idols, and they do all this, and they carry their idols on their shoulder. Here they come with their new idol. They just forged their new idol. They come down the road with their new idol. And they stick it in its place, and it stands there, Isaiah said. There it is. And from its place it shall not move. It'll never go anywhere. That's the end. It's there, and that's it. Yea, one shall cry unto it, yet can it not answer, nor save him out of his trouble. Idols not only defile you, pollute everything around you, can't help you when you need it anyway, but idols bring upon you guilt that activates God's vengeance. Ezekiel 44:10. And this is straight. The Levites that are gone away far from me, when Israel went astray, who went astray away from me after their idols, they shall even bear their iniquity. A man who lives worshiping any other than the true God, or worshiping the true God in any other way than the true way through his Son, is in a position where God's vengeance is activated against him. Then one other thing that idols do is inflame the heart. They set men on fire, spiritually speaking. They begin to consume them. In fact, Jeremiah 50:38, Jeremiah says, idols have driven you mad. They've lost their senses. And idolatry, a lifetime of worshiping the wrong things, the wrong gods in the wrong way, can drive a man to the place where he cannot any longer think sanely. Deuteronomy 7:25 says, idolatry is an abomination to me. Deuteronomy 16:22, Deuteronomy chapter 17, God says, I hate idolatry. Revelation 14, Revelation 21, Revelation 22, God says there's no idolater ever going to enter into my kingdom. So, beloved, there's only one way to react to idolatry. Flee. My dearly beloved, flee from idolatry.